So the Sonoma County Office of Education, Unification Feasibility Study. So I'm going to introduce Ms. Christy White. She will give you context about who she is, why she's here, all of that. But prior to me handing the mic over to Christy, I wanted to just kind of set the stage so everybody understands kind of the structure of how this agenda item is going to go. So we will start. Ms. White will provide the results and conclusions of the feasibility study. And then after her presentation is complete, we're going to be opening up the meeting for public comment. So the structure of this meeting is not a town hall style Q&A session, but we do want to encourage and promote a productive meeting where people can get answers. This is a complicated topic to comprehend. It's also a sensitive topic for many of us. So if there are questions or clarifications that Ms. White can't speak to, back and forth interactions will be allowed. It is also my responsibility as the board chair to ensure that the order of the meeting, that there is order in the meeting. So if in the event a question becomes a discussion, a debate, an interrogation, or in excess of 3 minutes, I will reserve the right to move on to the next commenter. Then after all of the public comment is complete, the board will then engage in a discussion, ask Ms. White any remaining questions, and then at the completion, there is no action to be taken at the end of this. This is just a discussion item, and then we will adjourn the meeting. So with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Christy White.
Thank you very much, Madam President and fellow board members, Superintendent, Uncle. So nice to be here tonight, and I recognize some of the faces that I've met as I was conducting this study. And so tonight I have a presentation, and first of all, let me just introduce myself. I'm Christy White. I'm president of Christy White. We are a CPA firm and a consulting firm that works exclusively with school districts throughout California. And one of my specialty areas is school district reorganization. And the Sonoma County Office of Education, on behalf of their county committee on school district organization, hired me a couple years ago to start looking at the feasibility of consolidation in West County, as well as Santa Rosa. There was a similar study done there. So this is the second part of a two-part study. So some of you may be aware that the first part was a financial feasibility study that was done a couple of years ago. But let me talk about kind of what the charge, what the mission was that I was given. And it was really to answer this question for the community, and that is, would unification enhance the instructional opportunity of all students at a similar or reduced cost to the affected districts and or taxpayers? And so the financial feasibility part is obviously very crucial to all of this, and one of the reasons we did it first. And in doing that study, we came up with 3 different scenarios. Obviously, there's multiple different ways you could merge districts, unify, combine, but we came up with 3 looks that kind of gave a good sense of whether this would be financially feasible in this county. We're talking about West Sonoma County. And there's 11 school districts that are involved in this. So one of the first scenarios was unify everything. The second was to create 2 unified school districts out of the 11 districts that are here. And then the third was to consolidate elementary school districts together, but keep the high school district overlaying the entire territory. And in all of those cases, there was a financial negative loss in terms of revenues. There's no new money from the state, no incentive money to consolidate schools. And one of the reasons there was a loss, some greater number than others, is because there's different funding profiles for the districts out here. Some of the districts, particularly here in the Russian River area, receive community aid. We call it basic aid. Essentially, you have more property taxes than the state's minimum guarantee, which is a great resource to have. And a lot of the smaller schools in this area really could not function well without having that. Other school districts, including the high school district, receive only the state's minimum amount of funding and does not have the benefit of the extra property tax dollars. Now, this could change down the road, of course, as people move in and out, assessed values go up and down, but as of today, in all of these scenarios, in combining schools, there would be some loss. So the first study looked at, okay, well, what's the opportunity to save money by consolidating administration, consolidating operations, going from, 11 districts' offices to 1 or 2. And clearly there are cost savings. And overall, it's probably a positive. But to get from A to B, it would be challenging for any new school board, but not impossible. So the county office said, okay, here's the financial feasibility. We will essentially pay for the next study, and that is a study of all the state's criteria for school district reorganization. And it's set by the law, it's set in Ed Code, the criteria that must be substantially met in order for the county committee to approve it, the state board to approve it, and ultimately go to an election, because it's the voters in the areas affected that will decide this. So Forestville came forward and said, we're going to take you up on the offer, and we want to look at scenario number 2, which is 2 unified school districts, and then we're going to include Harmony in this. And originally, Harmony was not included in scenario 2, but we want to add Harmony Elementary School to the Russian River Unified, and see what that looks like, whether it meets the state's criteria, and what would happen to the remainder, which is West Sonoma or Sebastopol Unified, right? So that's the study that you see here. And so the assumption is that in doing this, there's 11 legal entities, governmental entities, for each of the school districts here, right? They would, if a petition were put forward, it was approved, and ultimately voted on, then all of the school districts would dissolve, and 2 would emerge as the new school agencies. And one would be, for lack of a better word, a Russian River Unified, and then a West Sonoma Unified. The new board would actually name the new districts. So that's what the charge was, is to look at the study. It's exploratory only. There is no petition that has been submitted to the County Committee on School District Organization. Now, there could be talk among community members, groups, discussions, but there is no petition, okay? I have a slide on process, and I'm not here today to talk about process, but I can tell you that the process is long and arduous, and so even in the best case scenario, could take years to accomplish. All right, so the districts that we're talking about, of course, probably are represented here today. The high school district plus the 10 feeder elementary school districts. So Fort Ross, Montgomery, Monterey, Burnville, Forestville, Harmony, Oak Grove, Sebastopol, Twin Hills, and Gravenstein, okay? There's about 6,600 pupils in this entire region. There is declining enrollment, and that does factor in greatly. Ironically, it's one of the reasons that you're looking at consolidation. On the other hand, it's an issue when it comes to the educational programs and the offerings and having a sufficient number of kids in these programs. So 6,600 pupils, 25 school sites, including Annalee High, which is the only comprehensive site operating, and then the second site down the road, El Molino, which is under repurpose by the high school district right now. So if all of this, two unification petitions or a petition to create 2 districts came forward, 2 districts would emerge. And so this is kind of a map showing with the red squiggly line the districts to the north and to the northwest would be the Russian River area, and then to the southeast would be the West Sonoma Sebastopol area. So last spring I came out here and I met with all the affected school districts and I toured this beautiful region and toured the school sites, and I also gathered data from the districts that are involved on their programs, on facilities, inter-district attendance, finances, and so forth. There's also a lot of information just out there online nowadays, and so I definitely tapped into county, state, other governmental sources, even doing historical research on the area when I looked at community identity. So the state has 9 criteria that have to be substantially met, and all of them have to be met. There could be, and this really would be up to the state board, not to me, not to the county committee, but to the state board to maybe waive a criteria, but in order to even get there, really you have to demonstrate they're all substantially met in order to proceed with a successful petition. Here's the one slide I have on process. It talks about petitions being initiated by either a majority of board members or another governmental entity, or probably the most common way would be 25% of the registered voters in each of the affected areas. Now, one of the things that came up a lot on my travels was, well, we're an elementary school district, we really like our programs, we're very successful at what we do, and we're all for someone unifying, but we want to opt out, we want to not be part of this. And that is permitted in the law. And there's many examples up and down the state of school districts that have unified around the high school district boundaries, but then one or more elementary school districts opt out. So they send their kids for secondary to the unified district while retaining their control and independence over the elementary school district. So yes, that is an option, but it also makes it less feasible. And you'll see why when I go through each of the criteria. When you have particularly, a number or a majority of elementary school districts that are opting out, because you lose benefits of unification, okay? So when we get to the kind of the Q&A, if you will, one of the things I will say, and I'll say it up front, I'm not here to answer questions about next steps, how do we do it, what if, and any legal questions. I'm not a lawyer, and so my advice on any questions regarding process, next steps, or any of that would be to obtain your own legal counsel, obtain your own consultants if you want to pursue unification, okay? All right, so we're going to go through the criteria. Some are simpler than others. The first is there has to be at least 1,501 pupils in each unified school district. And so currently, a Russian River Unified, if we're just taking all the elementary districts and then a proportionate number of grade 9-12 kids, would have about 3,300 students, 785 in high school. But, and this is kind of a big but, 73% of the pupils come from Harmony and Oak Grove, all right? So the participation by those two districts, that region, the communities voting yes on this are really critical in not just this criteria, but in others. And especially Oak Grove, which has 50% of the population. So you could see that if too many elementary districts opted out, that you could be left with a unified district that does not meet this criteria, right? West Sonoma, easier to meet, would also have about the same number of pupils, about 3,300, and about the same number in grades 9 through 12. And this doesn't account for any inter-district attendance, which I will get into because I do think there would be quite a bit of that going on. So in theory, Sebastopol alone could unify with the West Sonoma Union High School District in the area of Sebastopol, Twin Hills, and Gravenstein, and meet this criteria today, all right? So, but overall, my conclusion is this criteria is met. Okay, the next part of this study, probably the most fascinating from my standpoint, was getting to know the communities and what identify and brings you together as community. And, you know, I've kind of listed Russian River items, factors separate from West Sonoma, but then many of these are common throughout West County as well. So in the Russian River, obviously the river, the ocean, the redwoods, all this beautiful natural beauty you have and all the tourism that it brings here. Cooler climate, especially on a day like today, and longer transportation routes. And that was an issue that came up with, you know, the busing of kids, but there really just are longer transportation routes as you go along the 116, way out, particularly to Monterey, Fort Ross, up to Montgomery and places like that. Wonderful history, very rich history with the railroads, with the lumber mills, and many community type events. In the West Sonoma area, obviously renowned, probably world-renowned apple and wine growing region, the tourism that comes with that, slightly drier, warmer climate, and then the city of Sebastopol really is that sphere of influence, with a very vibrant cultural scene, and also closer proximity to the major transportation. Some of the commonalities are the Native American history in the area, obviously the natural beauty, the tourism, and the similar transportation routes that you use to get across this region. Harmony was added to the Russian River side, and it does straddle the two areas. So there are parts of the territory that are closer to the Russian River and communities, I think Camp Meeker, that might identify more. But then there's other parts that are further south that probably identify more with Sebastopol, right? So if there was a unified district of Russian River that included Harmony, I would expect that some of the kids that live closer to Annalee High would opt for inter-district transfers there. But overall, my conclusion is that the criteria of community identity is substantially met. So the next is division of property. So what property are we talking about? The property that's in the elementary districts obviously becomes then property of the unified district in which they are assumed by, right? So it is the division of the high school district's property between a Russian River and a West Sonoma unified. And the law guides how this is done, essentially requiring that there be an equitable division, and it could involve a negotiated process. But the key methods are, if it's real property, it's going where the property is located. So Russian River would assume ownership of El Molino High. And West Sonoma would assume ownership of Annalee High and the district office, right? Other movable property, so we're talking furniture and equipment and vehicles, as well as funds, like ending fund balance, money, and unspent money, as well as debt, such as other post-employment benefits. Those would have to be divided between the two districts on some rational basis, and that's usually average daily attendance. Okay, bonded indebtedness, and all of the districts have bonds, either already completely spent, or some of you have just, successfully passed bonds, but all of the districts do have bonded indebtedness, and the laws say that when you unify, you have to make sure that you're keeping under debt limits. The proceeds from the bonds where they were voted on need to stay with the projects in which they're voted on. So Fort Ross passed a bond, and the money that they have or they'll issue needs to stay there. It's attached to that elementary district. And the voters who approved it are the ones taxed and not others, right? So it's a good protection for any outstanding bonds that are out there, as well as for the taxpayers knowing your taxes aren't going to go up because of this, with one exception. And that is the Measure 2018 bonds that West Sonoma County Union High School District issued. Most of those bonds have been used or will be used to improve Annalee High. And as such, if I were there at the table and talking about this unification and how do we divide, the bonded indebtedness for West Sonoma County High, which everyone is paying for, right? Everyone here. I would argue that the debt should stay where the property is located, Annalee High, and but as a result, the taxes would go up in the Sebastopol area because it's a smaller group, right, of assessed valuation there. But the property's there, the improvements are there. And then the taxes would go down in the Russian River Unified area, right? So that's something to consider. It's not an automatic, it is a legal process. But overall, I believe that this division of assets could be achieved and this criteria would be met. Okay, the fourth criteria is that the unification needs to preserve the district's ability to educate pupils in an integrated environment and not promote racial or ethnic discrimination or segregation. So the unification would create 2 unified school districts out of 11. And there might be more opportunity, actually. It's not a condition of this criteria that there be more opportunity, but there might be more opportunity for integration at the elementary levels. But at the same time, students don't want to have longer commutes, and so, essentially they're going to continue to go to the schools that they always went to. But regardless, and then on the high school side, you are dividing Annalee High's population, and when you look at race and ethnicity, it's pretty similar throughout this West County. It's predominantly white, around 57 to 60%, followed by Hispanic, which is about 30%, and then all other. And so there really wouldn't be any statistically significant difference in dividing the student population, but there could be socioeconomic differences. And so having a single high school, as you do now, actually favors this criteria in having a single integrated high school. But overall, my belief is there would be no significant segregation of populations and no conditions that would promote discrimination. So the conclusion in my study is that it would be met. This criteria would be met. The fifth one is really one that says when you do a unification, you can't create additional costs for the state of California, and that would not happen. The local control funding formula really prevents that from happening. And in fact, the state would save money because remember when I talked earlier, there would be a loss of some of the property taxes here that are kept local would end up going to Sacramento, being reapportioned in the formulas across the state. So there'd actually be a loss here and a gain to the state. But the criteria says there can't be an increased cost to the state, so it is met. Okay. The next one is educational programs, and I would say this was this and the financial analysis is the hardest to evaluate. And the standard here is that the new districts would need to continue to promote sound educational performance and not significantly disrupt the programs. Now, any reorganization is going to have some disruption, but so I think the word, not significantly disrupt is operative. So to analyze this, I looked at the current educational programs, I looked at statewide testing. Very importantly, I interviewed district educators, and I did independent research on the K-12 model of education. So favoring a unification, that's what we're talking about, right? Two unified districts. Favoring that are opportunities for improving articulation, and we're talking primarily curriculum, right? Between, the TK to 12th grade. And when you have one high school program and you have 11 or 10 feeder elementary schools, it becomes a little challenging, I'm sure, to make sure there's kind of this seamless transition and flow with the curriculum from the elementary to the secondary program. You'd also have so a K-12 model helps that a lot, right? You'd also have a single student information system, so you could better track a student and their progress, their needs, from the elementary grades all the way through to high school. That's a benefit of unification. In this area, another benefit is the reduced transportation time for the 9-12 grade pupils going to Annalee High. And if you look at my bound report, you see I analyzed that more. There would be a savings in the time. Maybe not as significant as some might think, because it's still a long ways to get from Fort Ross to Sebastopol, no matter which way you go, but there would be savings in the time. And clearly from Forestville to Sebastopol as opposed to down the street. So those would be benefits. And how does transportation feed into the program? Well, it would shorter transportation, more time for kids, more opportunity for after school and other educational, services. So, but, and here's the big but, if elementary schools opt out, and I have to say, as I traveled across this county, with little exception, all the elementary schools expressed interest in opting out. So it only takes one elementary school to unify, but you really lose a lot of the benefits of unification that I've just described here by doing that. And not to say that you don't have good reasons. I mean, there's some great programs out there that are unique. They're, indicative of your community, and you don't want to lose them. You're afraid that there's going to be your school will be closed, because a new board could do that. So, but that's the reality, okay? So, the challenge then I'm going to kind of hone in a bit on the Russian River Unified, but also we need to think about the impacts on Annalee High. So the challenge for the Russian River Unified is to create a comprehensive, successful high school program at El Molino, while West Sonoma works not to hurt Annalee's program, because you cut their enrollment in half, right? And it probably wouldn't be cut in half on day one. A lot of the kids going there will not want to come back maybe to El Molino, and they may want to finish out in Annalee. But nevertheless, at some point, the Annalee High School is not going to be 1,400 kids, it's going to be 700 and something kids. And then if you look at the enrollment projections countywide and in this area, these schools, these high schools, could only have 500 kids in a few years. So if you were in a community that was rapidly growing in enrollment, right? So think like, suburbs of Sacramento or somewhere like that, where there's been a lot of growth. That would be different, because you're unifying, and yes, you might have a smaller high school, but there's going to be, that one high school is already bursting at the seams, and so it's kind of more of a natural evolution. But in this case, cutting the enrollment in half, knowing that it's going to decline even further into the future. And of course, then there's the financial impact, which we'll talk about, because it's more expensive to run smaller schools. Even though there's benefits of smaller schools, I get that too. Okay, so it would be hard for Annalee to continue having a diverse course offering, and hard for El Molino. And Annalee has done well. The scores have ranged from low in math to very high in English language arts. And, each year COVID kind of threw some monkey wrenches in a lot of these numbers, but nevertheless, it compares pretty favorably to the other schools. In fact, comparing it to Santa Rosa High and Pioneer and Cotati, I think even Windsor and Maria Cabrillo, only Maria Cabrillo exceeded Annalee in terms of test scores, so pretty positive there. So one of the things that was discussed widely is what is the repurpose plans and efforts going on at El Molino High. And I'm not here to tell you what those are or to tell you where they are in their progress. I do know that the high school district has held some community meetings. I know their board has received grant money and has taken actions to further repurpose the high school so that it's not sitting empty. But right now it has the continuation high and some other things, but I think there's plans to include, for example, maybe a community school, a maker space, extended learning, STEM programs, and so forth. So the other question is, what would happen to the West County Consortium? So the West County Consortium, which is operated by the high school district, provides pupil services throughout this county for the small districts that would not be able to provide this on your own. And if there were two unified districts, that would cease to exist, right? Because one unified isn't going to run the consortium for another unified. Now, there are options, of course. The county office has their SELPA and there's other services, but there would be the question of, kind of recasting how this delivery would work and whether the cost might be more or less. And as I talked earlier, Harmony and Oak Grove they have territory that's closer to Annalee High than it is to El Molino. So, and it may be parents make decisions not just based on the distance, but we could probably expect there be some inter-district attendance more from El Molino to Annalee than the reverse. So to recap, and my report has a lot more than I'm able to share here in these slides today, but building a new successful high school program at El Molino without negatively impacting the program at Annalee High, and with less money, there is less money all around, it's a big risk. It's a big risk to both the unified districts, both educational risk and financial risk. So, my conclusion is that it appears that the criteria to continue to promote a sound educational program and not disrupt the current program would not be met. Okay. All right, criteria number 7, this speaks to school housing cost. So if creating 2 unified districts were to occur, would someone need to build a new school? Would there be some additional cost, significant cost as a result? And the answer is no. There's a high school here, there's a high school there. The facilities are adequate. There's always maintenance that needs to be done, but there is remaining bond funds, there's capital project funds, and then more could be passed in the future. And the enrollment continues to decline, so there isn't a real need for additional school housing. So overall, this criteria is met. Criteria 8, this essentially says that any proposal can't be designed primarily to increase your property values. So this is really speaking to developers, right? And clearly that's not the case here, so this criteria is met. And then the last, which I opened with, is that on fiscal management. And again, there would be projected loss of funding because of the loss of the community aid or basic aid monies. Maybe not complete loss, but some. And actually including Harmony in this created a little bigger loss than originally projected because Harmony brings a lot of pupils, even though they receive their own community aid money, but the highest number of high school pupils that would also theoretically be brought dilutes the per pupil funding because your community money is really your taxes. That doesn't change, whatever your property taxes are, and then how many pupils are you serving with this fixed pot of money? And so the more pupils you have, the less per pupil. If you were a state-aided district like the high school district, every pupil that walks in the door you get more money from. So it's just the inverse, right? And that really is the challenge in this area, is the different funding profiles of the districts, the declining enrollment, and frankly, the elementary districts wanting to opt out as well is a challenge. Okay, but let's say you're going forward with this, ways to respond to a funding loss. Well, this county's been very astute in the use of charter schools to help create some additional eligibility for what is called basic aid supplemental funding, which is property tax money. But that funding source is unpredictable, it's uncertain, and it's very challenging to obtain it in a larger district. It's easier in a smaller district. You could try to obtain special legislation to provide an incentive for unification in the West County, but there's no guarantees there. It could be an expensive and uncertain outcome. So practically speaking, cost savings is really what is needed to overcome the revenue loss through administrative and program operational consolidation. But again, the fewer elementary districts that join in, the less opportunities there are for that. So my conclusion is this criteria is not met absent the development of a sound, achievable, community-supported financial plan to address the immediate fiscal losses to each of the two districts upon unification. So the overall conclusion and the answer to the question, would unification enhance the instructional opportunities for all students at a similar or reduced cost to the affected districts and taxpayers? No, not based on current conditions, okay? And the two state criteria that I believe do not appear to be met was the continuing to promote the sound educational performance and not disrupt the programs, and then also the financial aspect. So, there are just kind of other options. There are ways to achieve efficiencies without unification, and you've done many of these in some of your, sharing of a superintendent or other services, the West County Consortium. Those are all great examples of, banding together to be more efficient with the taxpayers' dollars. Small elementary districts that are contiguous to each other and have similar funding profiles might merge, and they can unionize. So you could go from 11 districts to 10 to 9 to 8, right? And that might be a more natural evolution, particularly as enrollments maybe decline in certain areas. And I would encourage the repurposing of El Molino. I believe that was the main reason for this study. And I understand the community's desire to make good use of that high school. So and I'm sure no one would probably disagree with this, including the high school district, want to make the best use of that facility in providing community school options, expanded learning after school, and so forth. So with that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Christy. Appreciate that. Okay, next is the public comment portion. Just to kind of get a grasp, can I see a set of hands if you're planning on making a comment? You don't have to commit, you don't have to, and you can make a comment if you didn't. I just want to get an idea. Okay, we have a few. Okay, so I'm going to hand the mic over to Mr. Dunkel, and each commenter has 3 minutes for their comments.
So for those of you who would like to make a comment, if you could just sort of get yourself in an orderly line, and I'll leave the microphone up here, and you'll have your 3 minutes.
Mr. Knuckle, what happens if we have questions specifically about the presentation?
So that will be part of the opportunity here, as Jamie mentioned earlier on. You can just, yep.
Hello, I'm Kimberly Lambert. I'd like to thank the Forestville School Board for stepping up and choosing an option for Christy White to study, and to Christy White for your study. This feasibility study provides a compelling starting point for envisioning a brighter future for our students through potential formation of 2 K-12 unified districts. This reorganization offers significant educational, logistical, and financial benefits compared to the current structure of 10 K-8 districts in a single high school district spanning 400 square miles. The unification study indicates that there isn't sufficient support to open El Molino. I respectfully disagree. Over the past 2 years, I have not met one single person who thinks reopening up El Molino for our West County students and family is a bad idea. And I think the people that are here are pretty in support. This is a lengthy process that is just beginning. Unification would streamline administration, reducing the duplication of overhead costs across 11 districts. The resultant savings could be redirected to classrooms, enhancing instructional programs, and student support services. Reopening up El Molino as part of a Russian River Unified District could significantly reduce commute time for rural students, giving them more time for academics, extracurriculars, and family. The study highlights Anley High School's impressive academic performance, while also noting that the West County had established alternative school programs. These programs, most of them, were already in place when El Molino was closed, and in no way are the brainchild of Anley. Currently, I believe Anley is receiving differentiated assistance because of low achieving levels among homeless students. Students from West County who attend Anley have voiced concerns about the insufficient academic counseling and college preparation support. This is not about just opening El Molino. It's about creating a modern school district structure that provides the best education for all West County students while using our financial resources wisely. Our current system with its fundamental structure of 10 K-8 districts and a single high school district is outdated and no longer serves the diverse needs of our communities effectively. By reimagining how we organize and deliver education, we can develop truly state-of-the-art programming that prepares our students to thrive in the 21st century. Now's the time for us to join forces to collaborate and create a school system that reflects the innovation and excellence that our students and families deserve. Again, this is only the beginning. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? All right, hello everyone, I'm Alina Peterson. I am the West Sonoma County Union High School District Student Board Rep. I didn't have anything planned to say here, so I'm just gonna try to make this quick so that we can all go home. But I just wanted to say that obviously a lot of change is happening in the world, and we're also just seeing history repeat itself, whether that be in the election or the decisions being made in the Santa Rosa High School District right now. But I just wanted to say that there is such a crucial opportunity for change, not necessarily in this decision, but just in our schools in general. Like, obviously everybody was affected by the pandemic, and I can't even imagine what the teachers have seen since that. But as a student, there's such a great loss that's happened. And I'm not trying to say that we should coddle or become too soft or too gentle in our students, even though there's been a lot of mental and brain developmental change that's happened, but we can't keep wasting opportunity on things like the betterment of students and things like that. And I just wanted to say that it's really important to ensure that really the best education is possible for all students, because again, as a student, there's such a great lack of engagement so much, and it's hard. And I feel that as a student. I'm sure teachers feel that. I don't want to speak for them, but I'm sure they saw a change before versus after the pandemic, and like I feel that, and it doesn't feel good, and it just makes me sad. And so I just wanted to say that I think it's really important that we all know at the end of the day, everybody here is for the betterment of an education for our youth of today. And that no matter the sides of the bleachers that we're on, we all really are just here for the betterment of kids and not for standards or pride and things of the past. And I just wanted to say that that's really important to think about in upcoming decisions like this, because power really does start in things like this and things in the youth of today. And yeah, it's important, and I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Chris Kahn. Been here for, I don't know, what, 30, 40, 50, 70,000 some odd years, etc. I have two things. Just want to make a comment and a question. Get here? Yeah, no. Oh, is that better? No?
Is that better? Thank you very much. Know that.
Okay. Starting off, longtime resident here. My family's been here. Grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents have been here in Sonoma County. Came here in the 1850s and been here pretty much ever since. I'd like to appreciate, Christy, the work that you did. I saw the presentation. Obviously, you put a lot of work into it. And, for the most part, it looks really great. I only had one little question on it, or actually one comment, is it looked like you reached out to the various school districts, but did you reach out to anybody in the community? So I would suggest if you do another one, you may want to see what the community's ideas are on that, maybe put that in as a bullet point. Second part is to point out that the fact that these programs, on item number 6, you said that they're not going to be able to maintain what we currently have. Most of that stuff was in place before Emelina was shut down. Most of the programs that the schools have, it grows with their toolbox. Guerneville they also use the toolbox program. They call it, it's called the key box program, etc. All those have been in place and have been supporting for years, and none of that would be changing. So I think that was also not quite accurate. But my biggest question is, you're saying that we're going to lose money through LCFF. Well, I fail to understand how we can lose money by breaking the districts or consolidating into one. The money's still there. People are still there, values are still there, programs are still there. Could you please explain how we can lose that money? Because it's not making sense in my little old mind.
Well, I have to say, the state always tries to make things as complicated as possible. And so this is one instance of that. There's a funding formula that basically says, we're going to give you so much money per kid, but if the local property taxes spill over this bucket that we're going to give you, you get to keep the difference, which is great. And a lot of the districts here in West County are in that situation where they actually get more money per pupil than other like districts in the state. And that really helps these small districts to frankly, put their budgets together and have the nice programs they have at the elementary levels. But when you consolidate a district that has this spillover of property taxes with one that doesn't, and that's the high school district, then you're only getting whatever excess there is. You're not getting any more by bringing in those extra students. It dilutes basically your bucket of money. And I'm not sure if that entirely answered the question, but it's simply a matter of the formula the state has. And in my original study, if these elementary districts here were to merge, you'd be in pretty good shape because most of you all have extra money. But the high school, adding in those extra kids from the high school is really what creates that loss. Over time, cost savings could make up for the loss, for sure. It's just a matter of how do you get there, because there'd be a little fiscal cliff you'd have to overcome.
Okay, there it goes again. So just to clarify, financial CFS not impacting anything from the elementary through the consolidation. It's just if they were to take the West County High School District and were to break that in half, that would result in the loss, correct?
For this Russian River area, yes. There are some other elementary districts in West County that are similar to the high school district, and they're state aid funded next door to one that isn't. So it really takes an analysis of what do you want this district to include, and what would be the budget before consolidation and after. And that's what my previous studies have attempted to do.
Okay, it makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I read your report fairly thoroughly, at least the first part of it. And the transportation times that you put into the report using Google, really, most people don't travel those roads. Most people go through Guerneville and then come out 116, which is what you described, originally. And for kids who are driving, that usually starts in their junior year. So the younger kids often have parents that have to get them to school. And that's one of the big issues, is that if you take, say, 15 minutes from El Molino to Sebastopol, and you add that 15 minutes both ways, twice a day, for parents that are trying to get their kids to school and having to drive them, you're adding an hour a day, not, the 15 minutes. So that's something that your report is written, but it's something that I wanted to point out, that's really a problem. And the second thing, educationally, there are academic classes that would be provided at both schools. The thing that made my kids and my grandkids all went to El Molino. And the thing that I have grandkids that went to Ambly too, because they were younger. But the thing that stood out to me when the two schools combined was the extracurricular. So kids who are adding the travel time have a harder time participating in the extracurricular activities. And when you put so many more students in, when my grandkids went to El Molino, and a smaller school like you're describing, basically anybody who wanted to participate in sports participated in sports. And in a larger school, it's much more competitive, and not everybody gets to participate. That's a huge difference. I think I turned myself off. Okay. There's a button here.
That's time.
No, I have to press the button. I don't talk louder. Anyway, I think that there are definite educational advantages to kids being able to participate in after-school activities and in sports for a smaller school. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name's Bob Geisinger. Good old Matt here. Testing 1, 2. So, Principal Matt. Testing 1, 2. Principal Dunkel here has been my principal at Elm High School.
Yeah, I can just talk to you like this. I happen to have one of those voices.
Let's just do that.
You like this? Does this sound better? Yes, it's good. Excellent. I enjoy it a lot better too. It reminds me of the days when this actually happened a lot more. All right, so I was the El Molino High School coach for boys volleyball. You might have seen a few things about us years ago. We started in 2008, 2009. I had the great opportunity to work with Matt Dunkel and the great team of coaches, everything that happens in a small community. The number one thing, coaches don't really get paid. the reality is we get paid through a couple side things, which is when you build a great team of great people, other schools in other communities that have entirely large groups have their coaches talk to their principals and call our principal at the high school and tell him how great our athletes are, how amazing they are. I think if we pay attention to the fact that if you build a great team, you'll get great results. I have huge questions about a lot of this, and understand this. I thoroughly believe that the education comes first. What I'm talking about doesn't necessarily mean sports. Okay? The competition between Carrillo and Andy at the educational moment that they took that record to figure out who was first, well, of course I want Andy to be first, because there were El Molino athletes, El Molino people that left here and became part of it. So I'm on that side. I'm duality. But I do know one thing. The key is that time is so everything doesn't happen all at once. It's a weird thing I want you to think about. Time. When the studies are done is a moment in time. It doesn't reflect reality a lot of times. Question everything to come down to the final conclusion. CPA White has so many important things she did. I bet you she poured her heart into this, as I did all of my projects. Okay. I don't want to once announce it. I come from a family of CPAs. I understand what they do. Okay. She's probably worked with Jen Schneider. I don't know if you worked with her at all. She was also in the newspaper a lot and reported for the PD. It's these philosophies that I love because it gives you incredible insight as to what could be. Okay. The secret is, how do you divide a high school into two high schools? It's incredible. We had a great speech here. Loved the speech from an Anley High School student. Okay, and I love that. Is she willing to come over here? Finish out her career here at El Molino? Okay, that's amazing. That's exactly what we're looking for. I say divide the school based on GPA. Ooh, that's going to hurt some people. Why do we want one grade school to have to be the conclusion of whether or not this finals out?
That's 3 minutes, thank you.
I say split Willowside. The GPA out of Willowside would solve a lot of problems. Start thinking outside the box, because that's how I want to match this.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I'm not as loud as you are, so
Yeah,
I'll
she's
do
going to do
this.
that. I see that.
Hold it in.
Trust me, it's cool.
Testing. Hi, everyone. I'm going to start my timer. My name is Joni Bleckel, and I have a different perspective because I taught at Forestville School for 25 years. I was a Gurnville Gator, graduated from there. My high school was Ursuline, which is now Cardinal Newman. So I have a perspective on all of this that I think is valuable, and what I see here, and I want to thank the Forestville Board for requesting this, and for Christy for this amazing work, and letting us truly know, because it really clarified to me where we're at. When I saw this first happening with El Molino online, because we were beginning the pandemic, we were panicking because I saw how quickly it was being rushed. The CEQA was not done. And when the CEQA isn't done, that means they can override all of that and do everything to get to the result of getting El Molino closed and Annalee to get the West County on our side 66% of the tax base. And that was very frustrating to people in the West County to have 2/3 of the taxes go to all to Annalee now. So that's extremely frustrating to watch that happen so quickly. And when I was a union rep, And we requested this feasibility study in the first place, it was 2019, I think. So it's been 5 years. So in months, El Molino was closed. It's taken us 5 years to get to this place. And in reality, what I'm seeing here is this is something we truly will not be able to accomplish in this format. I have been touring primary schools for my granddaughters, and wait lists are happening at Harmony and Oak Grove. So I can see that they definitely will opt out no matter what we do. I was here at the beginning of the charter at Forestville School. We watched and encouraged basic funding programs. We survived because of our work to get to that place. So watching us lose that funding would be traumatic. So the reality is, just as our young student rep said, we need to think outside of the box. What can we do? How can we get to the state, the county, the services we need in a creative way that also include El Molino? And I see we are all frustrated. I am too. My children went to El Molino. So I would like you guys to consider the reality of what we're looking at, and let's look to what we can do, how we can best serve, thank you, that was 3 minutes, how we can best serve all of the students in our area, and how we can all get that work done more quickly than the 5 years it took to get to this place. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jackie Brazil, and my son graduated from El Molino High School in 2017. I'm not taking a side either way, I'm just gathering information, but my comment is that you didn't mention Laguna High School at all in that study. You referred to it as El Molino High School, and unfortunately we all know that El Molino High School isn't here anymore, but we have Laguna High School, and we have high school that is improving, and a really strong principal there, and community and students that are participating in our community. They're doing volunteer work and they're wanting to be engaged. So I'm not saying no or yes, I'm just saying we do have Laguna High School, and I would request that when you refer to El Molino in your literature, it's now Laguna. So I don't know how that gets, included in there. But anyway, it's a good group of students, and they're really trying hard, and the principal is really doing a great job. So I just wanted to speak up for them too.
Thank
I'm one of those guys that doesn't need life for too. So, right there. 2 points. One is the opting out thing. Okay, the opting out. A lot of local power structures. The gentleman before said something about talking to the community and not just the principal of the school or the board. They want their own little power base. They're afraid to let it go. Where the community members of those small school districts might want the unification. So he made an excellent point. The other thing is something I've never understood since this whole thing came up about closing El Molino is Mendocino, Humboldt, Lake County, I believe they have a lot of high schools, like 300 kids. So why can't we be viable with 700 or even 500? That doesn't make any mathematical sense. If they can do it, why can't we?
Thank you. I will need this. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I was the first graduating class at El Molino. I went to Oak Grove. We had to make a choice whether I was going to go to Anley or El Molino. I could have gone to Anley. My parents owned a paint store, Sebastopol. Could have used that address. Half of my friends went to Anley. Half of my friends went to El Molino. I want to mention, I've been a foster parent for 25 years, and I've had youth in both schools.
And one of the advisors said to me when I was at Anley, he had been at both schools, and he said, the thing about El Molino is that it's a community, nobody's other, everybody's included. And I know personally, if I had stayed at Anley with 1,500 students, instead of moving my little class of 101 graduates, and we were the big men on campus. The first year we were Anley, the second year we were El Molino in trailers, and then we moved our own stuff from the Beacon's truck from El Molino, put it on the truck, moved to Anley, and took our desk into our classroom. If we were English, we went to English. And so we bonded in a certain way that stayed with that community. Now I realize it's 50 years ago, but I still found that every time I walked in with a foster youth to sign up, that office is a family, and I don't see what's missing in the data, and I love data, but what's missing is the heart and the family, and the fact that at El Molino, a lot of times it was the misfits that found a certain place. And personally for me, I would never have been able to stand here if it wasn't for El Molino. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Hi, my name is Emily. I just have a question. So you keep using the words that the elementary schools would opt out. So as you stated, this is a really complicated topic. The community has not been educated on what's consolidation, what's unification, right? It's going on in Santa Rosa City Schools. It's chaos, as you know, right? There's lots of rumors, there's lots of false information out there. So you stated that you did testimonials. So I'm wondering, what was your methodology for analyzing and deciding that most of the elementary schools would opt out? Was that just testimonials with admin, with actual school people? Was it testimonials with community? What was the methodology that you followed to come to that conclusion?
Right, well, I didn't actually come to a specific conclusion that so many elementaries would opt out. In fact, it's not even really within the scope of the study. But as I was visiting each of the districts and meeting with the superintendent and board representatives and staff, there were some community members as well. I did repeatedly hear questions on, well, how do we opt out? And statements like, we would intend to opt out. Now, whether they do or not, how any petition gets started is well beyond the study, but it is something in the law that is permissible. Clearly, if the citizens speak out, they will override anything the school board can say, right? Because you vote for the school board members. In addition to, in this process, a citizen's petition, pretty much trumps a lot. So, but nevertheless, throughout my travels, I did hear repeatedly that what I heard, this is just as of today, who knows, a year from now could change the sentiments, or maybe it's already changed since I've been here. But throughout, I heard, we want El Molino reopened, but as an elementary school district, we don't want to be part of a unified, because we're afraid of what we would lose in our own program.
Yeah. Which is fair enough. There's a lot of material that's quite subjective without a set methodology to come to that conclusion.
It really is no conclusion in the report, but it does kind of weigh in on, okay, if there's benefits of unification and articulation and all of this, but the elementaries don't participate, you're losing the benefit. Or, the school could be 3,300 kids, but if elementaries aren't participating, could not even meet the state's criteria. So it kind of weighs. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I noticed that you didn't really mention about the high schools was it would greatly reduce the student to teacher ratio. to divide them and put a lot less strain on the individual teachers and give more one-on-one educational time to the students. The other thing was, how does the property taxes from people in Forestville stay with the school in Sebastopol when we voted for supporting our school in Forestville if that gets divided?
Okay. First of all, your first point on teacher-pupil ratios, that's really driven by a budget of a school district. So whenever you have lower ratios, there's more cost, right, associated with that. So just because you divide the school into two doesn't mean you're going to have a lower ratio. In fact, it could be higher if you have less money. So there's that. I'm not quite sure I understood the second question, but let me just try, and then you can ask again if I didn't answer. But yeah, the property taxes are collected in all of the districts in which the properties are held and given to the school district and other districts within that area. And so what Sebastopol collects doesn't have any bearing on what's collected here in Forestville. But when you merge them all together, then this formula, this state formula, comes into play, and it acts as if, oh, now we're a whole district, and so the end result could be less funding than where you started before.
What I'm specifically talking about is, you said the 2018 property taxes.
Oh, the bonds? Right, so the bonds were voted district-wide, so everyone here who owns property sees it on your tax bill, right, for these bonds. Most of that money, like 95% of the money, is being spent on Annalee High.
But if the current school is being used as Laguna High School, why is that money not going to then also repair that school as well? It seems like Annalee High School is hoarding that money and not distributing to the...
No, the money belongs to West Sonoma Unified High School District, which is this entire area. And you vote for their school board members just like your elementary, so we're all kind of one in that. And they have their own facilities master plan that decides where the money's to be spent. And their priorities in that plan right now, as listed, and they could change, are to improve the campus at Annalee. There was some money spent here at El Molino, and there might be some more money spent down the road, but you could maybe imagine that if you were a school board member and you have one comprehensive high school, then you might have more needs to make sure that plant is sufficient for the kids. So those are the kinds of conversations that go on at a school board level at the high school. Okay.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Great. I'm Leah Woody. I'm here to speak on behalf of my son, who is a sophomore, currently on independent study, because he just couldn't handle it, a large school. And I'm speaking to the community more in terms of what we're going to do now, right? Yes, we can have surveys done. The fact is that we have a 41-acre beautiful property that we love and are so passionate about it. That's something that I've missed being around. I wish that we had more of thinking with educators, that we had smaller high schools, not larger high schools. If they were smaller, my son would not be on independent study right now. To be packed in like a sardine is overwhelming, and our students went into that school after the pandemic. sick. Like their first day back on a campus life was on a consolidated school with 1,600 students. Same for the staff and same for everything. So if we can do that, this is our 4th year now. So I'm not intimidated with how long it's going to take to utilize this property in a good way. There's a lot of different ways we could do it. Certainly, there's a mess in Santa Rosa. There's a mess in all of our schools right now. So to create a school from the heart of a community that I've never known bigger. I live in Forestville. I love this community. And it's just, it's a culture. And that's something that a survey can't touch. It doesn't talk about it. So we've moved mountains. We just have to decide what we want to do and how we're going to move forward. And thank you, Kimberly, for being a guiding force on it. I certainly don't want to disparage the possibility of Annalee. I want all high schools to be prosperous. But I do know that we live in such a vast area of the county that is serving so many students. And it's growing. It is continuing to grow. We see the traffic. Feeder schools, I feel like the feeder schools have really, they lost the connection with us. Guerneville School, like El Molino, staff would go there and talk. We would have a relationship with each other. All that was lost, right? And so the beauty of being in a community and in education is to be in communication with one another and really listening to each other. So I'm excited about this, and I'm ready for the years ahead. I did have a question.
Oh, sorry, your 3 minutes. 3 minutes is up.
Okay.
You want to pass it along to somebody
Yes.
else?
I'm going to add to what Leo was saying about the small schools, because in a rural community, people who choose to live in a rural community have a certain personality and have needs to be met that are addressed by a small community with more intimacy. Our community has always been very tight. And so El Molino High School served students who enjoyed being in a small school. I came from a high school with 300 students, so I understand the benefits of that. Not that our teams were all the best, but nonetheless, small school. So there is a community personality aspect to this, and this is like a very data-driven report, and all of the analysis is very data-driven. And it was one of the problems that happened with the consolidation, that it happened too quickly, and it was data-driven, and it didn't really take a lot of people's needs into account. One of those things, like was mentioned, that there was never a CEQA study that was done when the consolidation was first presented, and it was put aside, and there was some rule that said it didn't have to be done. But one of the benefits of the CEQA study would have brought into traffic into the equation of distance. So when you talk miles, and you're going miles from Fort Ross to Sebastopol, miles from Fort Ross to Forestville, you're not considering traffic and the time that takes, because Sebastopol is a hub of 2 major highways, and the traffic in the mornings and in the afternoons is horrendous and adds 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour to every commute. It's not just the miles driven. So with this one, please take the time to add things like traffic studies onto your reports. Economic impact of these communities, that's one of those things that was left out of the original consolidation. And please consider that, yes, just like Leah's son, my granddaughter couldn't handle the high school at Annalee and ended up into independent study because she was not emotionally capable of going to a tightly packed school with all of that's down there. So those are things, rural people like space. That also means our children like space, and they like schools with space where they stand out in a crowd instead of being one of just a number. So that's part of, take your time, make this done right, because it's really important to all of our families. And one of the things about the lowering enrollment that keeps happening and people keep talking about, one of the differences about the Russian River area is that there are a lot of young families moving in right now. They're literally just giving birth to babies, and one of the reasons why they're here is because they can get affordable housing, because we still have summer cabins that need to be turned into homes, and they can afford to buy them and live in them. And then also they want small towns and small schools and tight communities. Thank you.
Hi, I'll try and keep it quick. My name's David. I went to El Molino High School. I have a 3- and a 5-year-old. I intend for them to go to El Molino. They go to Forestville School, and I went to Fort Ross School. And so I got on the bus at 6 in the morning when I went to high school to get here. I think the thing that we need, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of opinions. I think the thing that we need to look at is number 6 and number 9. Because that's what's stopping us from moving forward theoretically, right? Does the state's 9 criteria have to be met for it to happen?
Yes, it's reviewed at multiple levels. This is not even at the beginning level, okay? This is a preliminary, an exploratory look, and if you get a petition going, and then that petition would have to be evaluated again for these 9 criteria by the County Committee on School District Organization, and then at some point probably reviewed by the State Board of Education. So there's multiple levels of review, but what is in here, you're right, number 6 and number 9, in my opinion, seem to be the sticking points. And if the petitioners or future petitioners or things change, those areas would need some of the kinds of studies that you're talking about here that I'm hearing, okay?
So I would believe, or I would imagine that there's a pathway to yes here, but that pathway is through 6 and 9. And I think that we have to dig deeper into those 2 criteria before we start moving forward. And maybe that's the pathway for the board and the community. There is no community like this. That's why I live here. And so I think that that's what we need to focus on as we move forward. Thank you.
I'm just going to say a little bit, and I think I'm loud enough. I'm a retired, no. Hello. Hello. I am a retired early childhood education teacher, and I've gone to many, many in-services and continuing education at SCO. They always use schools that started from the beginning, really young, all the way up as being a symbol of what was perfect for children, to have this same environment, and was called continuity of care. It seems to me that SCO maybe should have some input in this and use El Molino as a model school to establish something they would want to promote in the early childhood education all the way up.
Are there any other public comments? No? Okay.
You allow more than one?
No. You can find a friend to. Okay, so next, we'll turn it back to the board. For the board to have any discussion, questions with Ms. White. So, anybody wants to start?
So just a little bit of background.
our board first asked to look at scenarios 2 and 3. Okay. And said, oh, sorry, the last one. So we said, okay, so we want to look at scenario 2, but with a twist and add in harmony, because I think there was a fear the numbers wouldn't be enough. And he said, okay, but we're just going to do that one. We're not going to do without harmony. So, and I'm not criticizing anybody, I'm just saying that, and that took like a year and a half, almost 2 years. And so I think it goes to, it speaks to how long and complicated and drawn out this can be. So the better the planning, if there is any planning, the more, can be accomplished. And I just want to thank Christy for being so helpful and being so available, and for Sco also for being available and being helpful as well. We have kind of a nascent unification committee here on our board. By nascent, meaning that we haven't really done anything. We did ask for the study, so that was good. I will say that I think people need to have an open mind, regardless. And I think that people need to be considerate of everybody, regardless. And because that's the only way that I think whatever happens will happen. It has to be done the right way. And people have opinions and feelings on things, but I think, we really need to be respectful of everybody in the process, and try to let go of, some things and look at what really is best for the kids. It's often spoken in these rooms, what's best for the kids, but what really is best for the kids, I think that's the hardest one. So I guess that's not a question for Christy. It's just a comment that I have. And I want to thank Christy again for all the work. So it was a good report. Thanks.
I don't have a question. I just first want to thank Christy as well as our board for bringing this forward. And I want to thank everyone that's here for coming out on a cold and rainy night and showing the support and showing your interest and your passion for this subject. And as Max said, it is all about the kids, and that's why we're all sitting up here, because we want the best decisions made for our children. So thank you again for coming out.
Yeah, and I just echo what both Max and Jean said, and just on a personal note, I'm fairly new to this community, only about 4 years in, entered the community when this all started, actually, and have really grown to love it, and it's really nice to just see everybody here having such passion and love for the community, and to Max's point, I think that as long as we stay focused and relevant about kids and be respectful of each other and keep our minds open, I think, we can really move forward and do some great things. To be determined. Okay, I think that is it for the evening. So thank you again, Christy White, and thank you to SCO. And drive safe, stay warm. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Matt, for hosting.